Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Microsoft Fabric UK User Group. I'm your host, Leon Gordon, alongside co-host Pragati Jain. Pragati, how are you doing today?
Hey, Leon. Hey, everyone. I'm doing good. How are you today?
Yes, good. Thank you. Busy as ever. And today's going to be a bit of a different session for us, Pragati, because we're only ever really on screen when we're delivering our own sessions to the Fabric UK
Exactly.
User Group.
Yeah.
But in today, as we're going to have an AMA with a member of the Microsoft product team, we're going to remain on screen, have some backwards and forwards, ask some questions, give the community the chance to ask their own questions as well. So it's going to be an interesting experience, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting. And then I have to just behave properly, I guess, in front of audience because it's just Leon who knows me what I'm doing backstage. So yeah, I'll try to be more, good.
Excellent. So if anybody wants to ask that as the first question, then please do ask what does Pragati do behind
Oh,
the
gosh.
scenes when
Yeah.
we're on live stream.
Yeah.
But let's ask everybody where they're joining us from today. So please do become interactive in that chat. Let us know where you're joining us from today. As I mentioned, today is a great day. Obviously, we have, like I mentioned, product manager at Microsoft, Jay, joining us. Jay, what's the best way to put this? Calls himself the Dutch data dude. And I'm sure that you're all very familiar with him, both from a LinkedIn perspective and also at SQLBix and other conferences around the globe. So, Jay, welcome. Pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's good to
Excellent.
see everybody just joining from all the places. I see Birmingham, Connecticut, Bristol. So I'm going to type my location in here as well, if that's okay.
Definitely. Go
Absolutely.
ahead.
Please do. As we mentioned before, we do get a very engaged group. So we're expecting there to be lots of questions coming in, especially around some topics that we were discussing a little bit behind the scenes there as well. So,
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
with that being said,
I
I think
think
that. Go on,
I
Pragati.
think, Leon, just before we start everything, I really want to announce something, guys. On the previous user meet of ours, I announced that Data Weekender is coming again this year, and our CFS is still open, but our CFS is going to close in next 2 days. Okay, so if any of you guys want to start your speaking journey, or you're an established speaker but you want a stage to share your knowledge, please do submit your sessions because we are going to close it on Saturday. So I'll just put the Data Weekender CFS link in the comments. And if you guys are planning to submit, please go ahead because there's not much time now to submit your session. Sorry, we can start with Jay now.
No, perfect. Please do. And is it virtual or is it going to be in person at all, Pragati, for
Oh
people?
yeah. So it's going to be a virtual conference. So you really don't have to plan like traveling to a place. You can just attend from your couch if you want to. So yeah, it's a pretty comfortable conference. It's a data platform conference basically. So yeah,
And
submit all your sessions and yeah, I
highly
really
recommended.
want. Sorry, Jay.
Highly recommended as well to join, and
Yeah.
as well as
See.
as
Yeah.
an attendee as well as a speaker. So I would absolutely, if you're considering speaking in the Power BI community, or as you said, already very active, don't forget to respond to the call for speakers, and otherwise just join as an attendee. It will be fun, and I might
Thank you
be
so
there as
much, Jay.
well, maybe
Oh yeah, maybe,
if I get
maybe not.
chosen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Watch
It's
this
secret.
space.
Secret.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing what I would really like to motivate is if you're a women out there, please submit a session because I really support women community and I really want some women speakers to be there because I already know a lot many great speakers there in the community. So please, we have already got some amazing sessions from some women speakers, but I would really like to get more submissions there. So if you're a woman out there and you want to do something, then speak about something, just submit. It doesn't have to be a technical session, okay? It can be a non-technical session as well. So you don't have to talk about Power BI or Azure or Fabric. You can actually go and just talk about community. You can talk about your journey, how you entered into community. So it could be anything. So it's basically just go ahead and submit. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you, Pragati. And you were mentioning as well that there might be a certain Power Platform event happening somewhere in the USA next week.
Oh yeah. So next week, Microsoft Power Platform Conference is happening. in Las Vegas. And yeah, Mr. J is going to be there as well, telling us some secrets, which he tweeted about this morning on Power BI. So yeah, I'm quite excited to be there. I'm speaking there, Jay is speaking there. So yeah, it will be really great to see some of the community members again in person.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's going to be exciting for sure.
Please do make sure if you are in the area that you watch the event, and I'm sure it's being live streamed as well. Am I right in thinking?
No, it's an in-person event.
Okay.
So okay. I really don't know if that's the case. Yeah, because it's an in-person event. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think part of the keynotes, so the bigger sessions, are being recorded, as far as I know. But like the breakouts where the actual fun stuff is, not just kidding.
Yeah.
Those are not being recorded.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, but the news from that conference will come out soon enough, even if you're not there. You know, it will find its way to social media anyway. And, you know, after that, you will see all of us in the community, like, talk about it and, like, amplify that anyway. So don't feel like we're, like, you're missing out, obviously, hearing it firsthand. But you won't, like, you'll get the information eventually, right?
Yeah, I mean, just a heads up, because Jay tweeted this morning, these guys have been working on something from like 2.5 years, 2.5 years, right? And they're going to do a big reveal next week in the conference. I know, Leon, you'll be a little jealous, but I'll let you know the soon I know it.
Please do send it. I'll actually be, we will be at very different time zones next week. So I'm actually speaking at a conference in Malaysia next week. So literally the other end of the planet, pretty much. So we'll have to align on this news coming out. So please do keep me updated and keep all of us updated in the loop.
Definitely. So, I mean, I think the moment we know, we should be allowed to tweet about it if Microsoft permits. If yes, I think it should be. It's a conference, right?
You know, the moment we start,
at conference.
Yeah, the moment we talk about it, the moment we finished our sentence, it's you can do whatever.
I'll wait for 1 or 2 tweets and then I'll tweet it. Don't want to be the first one to do it, but yeah, definitely.
No, just wait a little bit. Don't risk it, and then yes.
I need some time to digest it, Jay, because the way you have made it like big on Twitter, like it's something you've been working from like 2.5 years. I'm very much excited to know what that is going to be. And of course, it's about Power BI, so it's another big interest for me. So yeah,
I mean, it's been the thing that I've been working on since forever I was on the team, actually. Like, I've been on the Power BI team since April 2020. So almost all of that time has been spent on that one feature that we're going to announce next week and going to reveal. So it's a big one. It's a big one. And it's like, it almost feels like it's like my baby going, like, you know, it's showing it to the world now. And this is the thing that I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. And of course, I've done other stuff, but the big thing that I've been moving is this guy. So yeah, it's exciting. But I cannot tell anything yet. So
exactly, we need like a countdown timer. Definitely. So, I mean, for everyone joining us that isn't aware of an AMA and Ask Me Anything and what that looks like, the goal of this session is to give you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have directly to Jay. You may have some that myself and Pragati can cover off as well, and for us to have a bit of an open dialogue for all things Power BI. I'm sure we'll touch on some Fabric. We may even get into a little bit of Excel and Power Platform in the background as well. But the main focus is obviously Power BI and Fabric today. So please do feel free to ask questions. You can do that via the chat. This is going to be a very, very interactive session. Both myself and Pragati have received questions prior to today's session. So I think it's probably going to be a good starting point while we wait for some more to come in as well.
Okay, let's get going.
Excellent. Pragati, do you want to start us off, or would you like me to get us going?
Yeah, I can start with the question I always wanted to ask Jay. Okay, so this question is something very much I relate to as well, Jay. So what is the future of DAX and Power BI? Okay, is this going to be simplified in future for developers like myself, or who really think like DAX could be tricky? Because I know majority of people still think like DAX is not always easy. I mean, I can say that from my experience, DAX is not always easy for me. So is there something we are working on that's going to simplify some of our, developers' life easy when they're using DAX in Power BI?
So first off, let me recognize you're absolutely right. I mean, DAX is hard. Let's not try to beat around the bush.
Yeah.
It is hard.
No, I don't want to lie there, because DAX is really hard. I mean, there are very less experts out there, right? I mean, on DAX.
Yeah.
I hardly see people saying DAX is simple. There
No.
are few who will say that, but I will never say that.
No, DAX is not simple. Once you grasp the concepts, it gets easier. The challenge with DAX so if you look at the history of DAX a little bit, if you wind back a couple of years, actually where DAX as a language, as a concept started, it looks a lot like Excel formulas. The original syntax is so similar to Excel formulas that it looks deceivably simple and like, oh, I can understand all this because I know Excel formulas, so I can jump right in. And then you suddenly learn that, wait a minute, this is not Excel.
Yeah.
This is suddenly a database that I'm talking to. There's like concepts of filter context and context transition in here, which just then break your whole understanding of this simple, very relatively simple formula language. So yeah, DAX is hard. I mean, and we know we've like, it's the number one blocker for people to adopt Power BI is DAX is hard. Like when we do user research, when we talk to our customers, the one thing we always hear is, why is DAX so hard? The problem is, it has to be hard to some extent because it's very powerful. It can do everything under the sun, and it needs to work if you have 5 rows of data or if you have 5 petabytes of data. It needs to scale to all of those. So that's where it starts to be different from Excel. It needs actually database concepts to be able to scale to those large data sets and still give you an answer. Let's say you're asking for the average profit you made on green products for customers whose first name starts with a P. Well, that needs to work on just 5 rows of data, but also on your 50 petabyte database that's over here. It needs to work on all of those. Excel can't do that simply because it doesn't have this notion of a database. So be able to handle all of that brings all of these concepts that you have to think about. Now, we can do better, and we will do better. And my personal goal on the team is to make DAX easier. So when I walk into my little office that I'm in here at home, I have this shelf of books here, and it basically contains these kind of things, right? And this is a visual reminder for me why I'm on the team, because the fact that books like these exist, this guy, right? The fact that this exists.
Yeah, we all know them, right? Yeah.
It's crazy. Why is this necessary? For a self-service analytics tool? Why does somebody have to go through all of this? Maybe take a training or whatever. That doesn't make any sense. So in a lot of ways, it's a testament to the success of the rest of Power BI that we made it this far with our core programming language being this hard. If you think about it that way, it's crazy how far we got.
Yes.
So it is hard. We need to do better. And it's my personal goal to make it better. And the things that I've been looking at and focusing on in the DAX world is not just like add more bells and whistles. Yes, we did. But we're also trying to rethink some of the concepts in DAX without forcing you to relearn everything. And then making it easier along the way, right? So we're not saying forget about everything that's out there. For the training you did is useless. We're not saying that, right? Because the books and the trainings that are out there, the concepts you learn there are great. However, we can also think about rethink some of those concepts and add another approach that would remove you from those concepts a little bit, distance you a little bit from the things that make DAX hard. One thing I like to say when I talk about like how I work and what my team does is we're talking about fattening the donut. It's a very American way to say. It's basically, think about DAX as a donut, right? there is a donut is round, right? Obviously, it has a nice surface you can imagine yourself maybe walking on, but there's a hole in the middle, and that's why I picked the donut. And the hole is where the complexity goes to infinity. That's where calculate, context transition, filter context, everything lives. And then the rim of the donut is where you're comfortable working with DAX. The reality today is that rim is very thin. Very soon after you start on with DAX and you onboard and you go like, oh, this is just like Excel formulas. Very soon you'll discover, no, wait, it's not. And the complexity in that hole is there, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm fattening the rim. I'm trying to add more stuff so you can be more comfortable longer on that rim. Not saying we'll remove these concepts. Eventually you will have to learn them. I'm just trying to postpone that moment for the majority of the users.
Thank you so much, Fajay, because I think just hearing those things is like already giving me like a positive sign. Okay, there's going to be something soon. So I definitely look forward to that, because like I lead a team of Power BI developers, and this year I actually got a few new Power BI developers who just started their journey. So they always ask me like, why did you write this DAX this way? Is this the most optimized way? If yes, then why it is the most optimized way, right? Then I have to show them a few things in DAX Studio, like how I optimized it and why I optimized it and why this is the best way, right? So sometimes I actually enter into those situations where I'm not able to explain them things. I have to go back, read things again, and then go back to them, right? Because I really don't want to make them confused about things. Right. So that's why that question was like so much relatable. Like there should be a way we need to make this thing simple, because people today everyone wants to work with Power BI, basically in the analytics world. And we really don't want them to stop just because of this one thing. Like, okay, there's only DAX there apart from Power Query Editor, but then I really don't know how to use DAX. So
another way to think about this maybe is when we create DAX, we created a very powerful, scalable query language, right? That is unique. And I see some comments going, can Kusto replace that? Can Python replace it? No, it simply can't, because it won't scale. It just won't scale to the scale that we need it to scale to. Never, ever. So we created something that is unique in this world that scales to that level. However, while creating that, we also exported loads of the complexity to our users. We said, here's a programming language. You can do everything in this, but we also offloaded a load of that to you. You have to go learn all of this to tease all of that power out. And right now, we feel comfortable with what that language does in its core. And it's time to, as I said, make the rim bigger, make the rim broader, add more stuff onto it where you can treat some of the complexity and get rid of the complexity for a little bit less flexibility, right? So with the complexity, you have the most flexibility. You can do whatever you want, as long as you understand how to do it in DAX. What we're doing now is saying, well, we can also give you little pre-cooked parts that you could just use, knowing and trusting it will work the way you expect it to work, but also so getting rid of some complexity there because it's easier to use, but also trading in some flexibility, right? So we're not taking away the flexibility, we're hiding the complexity for you. So there's a trade-off between flexibility and complexity. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, understood. It probably, I know you've mentioned, Jay, about the question in regards to Kusto. And the reason I've left the question here from Margazotta, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is that this goes on to ask a bit more in regards to, will there be an integration with Python in the future instead of potentially DAX development? So we'd be keen to hear your thoughts on that from that perspective.
I mean, we've thought about this, we looked at this, but honestly, to the scale that we need to have the programming language, the query language scale, there is no other option than continue on this path. The other languages simply don't scale enough. Like, let me put it this way. If we got rid of DAX and we put in Python right now, that would mean that your complicated measures or calculated columns would just reduce in performance. That is probably not what you wanted. Like if suddenly your KPI now renders in half a minute instead of 5 milliseconds, that is probably not the experience you want. And that is the reality if we were to switch out today. So there's really no way for us to change. We will have to make DAX easier. Now, it doesn't mean that we cannot have something that says you can write Python and we might translate it into DAX. So we might not expose the DAX to you, but we actually have some transformer that takes the Python code that you wrote and transforms it into optimized DAX, so we can actually, you can just write Python, but the actual thing that actually executes and gets all the performance is the DAX, right? So that's another avenue of thinking. Same would apply to SQL, right? We could potentially write a SQL layer that would allow you to express loads of concepts that we have in DAX, apart from measures, because those are special. But anyway, loads of other concepts, and therefore be able to maybe comfortably write a query. And then under the covers, that might be translated to DAX that is actually executed in the engine and gets you the results. But the only thing you would see is the SQL or the Python or whatever. So there's a potential integration, but ripping out DAX as the language that the database uses to generate its queries and results, I don't think that's feasible.
Excellent,
so
thank you.
We would either layer something on top, another language, or some sugar syntax, whatever, to make this easier.
Perfect. Thank you for going through that for us in a bit more detail. Pragati, I'll hand over to you for the next question.
Yeah. So let's take one that just came from the audience. I know this has something on Microsoft Fabric, Jay, but I know Fabric is the biggest thing people are talking about these days. So this is coming from Malgarzata. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I just heard of Microsoft Fabric product. What might be the benefits or new features for individual or Power BI users?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, right? I mean, how long do we have to talk about this, right? There's so much going on there. But just to try, I'll try to give it my perspective, right? What I'm seeing here in Fabric is, I see Fabric as this one place, the one-stop place where it's really your central component in your data estate, in your enterprise or in your organization. So all of the people that want to work with data, and we can talk about those personas in a sec, can use one centralized, one standardized way of storing and working with that data, right? So you might have your data engineers that need to clean the data, right, before it's usable for, let's say, a data analyst to report on it. You have a data scientist that want to use a different version of the clean data, so not the purely clean data, but the version just before, to do their mathematics and machine learning on top of that, and AI. Ideally, you want all of those people to work with the same set of data, the same storage, the way it's stored, and the same pipeline of where data goes from raw to the end product, and everything in between. That needs to be all integrated. That is what Fabric is to me. To me, it's a place where all of that comes together, where everybody can start from the same starting point, but then go from there to what their individual needs and roles require. So for Power BI, that means as a data analyst, I'm going to connect to things that are stored in Fabric. For example, in a concept that we call One Lake, which is this centralized concept in where all of these data that people use in an organization are stored in all these various shapes that are usable for everybody else. So really, as a Power BI analyst, you would say, okay, instead of just connecting to my data warehouse that is somewhere on that whatever, or that Excel sheet that I might have, I'm just going to use One Lake as my one source as a starting point, and then still I can add more stuff from other sources as needed. Power BI is perfectly capable of doing that. But at least the basis of my analysis is shared with all the other data-related personas in our organization. So that is really, for me, the core value prop of Fabric, is bringing all of these worlds together. I mean, you have data engineers, you have data scientists, you have data analysts, you have all of those already in your organization, but everybody's working in their own silo and sometimes just working on completely different data sets, don't talk to each other. Fabric brings all of that together and says, hey, let's stop doing that. You know, everybody does their own job, but we have a common foundation on which we all build our products and our success. And that is what Fabric is to me.
Definitely agree, Jay. I think for me, it's more transparency from the data side of things. Like as a Power BI developer, for me, it's more useful when I know, okay, what's been done in the previous layer where data is transformed before it comes to Power BI, right? So Fabric actually gives me that visibility to collaborate with you. Yeah.
And also see this as a career opportunity, right? You might be a Power BI analyst And you might go like, I don't understand all this world of data science and data engineers. I have no idea what those people are doing. Well, now, if all that is in Fabric, it's very easy for you to suddenly broaden your scope. And who knows, you might actually discover that you love doing data engineering or doing some machine learning here, right?
Yeah, you can actually start writing those PySpark notebooks, right? And then
right, exactly, because
you can.
The data you're going to work with is something you already know, because that's the stuff that you already work with in your Power BI environment, right? So it's also, see it also as that way. We're not telling you to now suddenly become a data engineer or data scientist, but for those that are like on this edge to go like, actually, I might want to do some of that, it suddenly becomes more easy. So just that integrated ability is just great. So think about this as an integrated place where all the data is stored, where everybody that works with data can work with the data in the way they need to, share it back to others so they can continue with the same data, right? So that's kind of like what I like to think about when Fabric is, what Fabric is. And of course, we're adding more stuff as we go, right? For example, something like Data Activator is then a new kind of capability that lights up there. So because of all of that coming together, you can suddenly build new stuff that we haven't done before.
Absolutely. It probably leads us on to a couple of questions there as well, Jay. And so from the Fabric side, I know that you've mentioned it's about unifying these personas into a single unsiloed domain, for lack of a better example. Now, one of the key selling points as well to Fabric is obviously the file format and how it translates across all of the different personas.
Yes.
Now, from a Power BI perspective, obviously, this makes it a lot easier to work and navigate from the service. Build out your reports directly, model your data directly on your warehouse, etc. And it makes that whole process a lot smoother for some people. And obviously, for Mac users, it's a welcome feature. What does that mean for desktop? And I suppose the question here, and I had this the other day in a workshop, and I'll tell you the answer that I gave after I posed a question to you, if that's okay. But the question I had is, why would we not build our data models directly in Fabric now? If we're Fabric users, we built a warehouse, we have a lakehouse, we have everything in here. Why would we not build it directly in that environment?
I mean, okay. So today, you might not want to do that all the time, right? Depends on what you want to do. But today, the reality is there's loads of stuff in desktop that you cannot do in the web so far, right? But let me be very clear. Our vision is we want to have parity between the web and the desktop when it comes to Power BI. So eventually, in the fullness of time, whatever that means, soon, trademark, soon mean nothing, right? Could be next week, could be next decennia, who knows? There will be parity between these two environments, right? So then you can choose what you want to use. And of course, if you're a Mac user or you're stuck to a browser for whatever other reason, because let's say your Office doesn't allow you to install software on your machine, you're stuck to one of the two choices. But in reality, how we build new features now as well is we're not shipping features in just the web or just in desktop. We're shipping features in both. Now, they might light up in one earlier than the other, but the reality is when I design a feature right now, I have to think about these both. I need to make sure that this works in both environments. So in the long run, the goal is to have these two options on the table. You can go into the browser, you can go into the desktop. Now, the browser is awesome for simple changes, for on the go, like, oh, you know, I'm somewhere on an airport and I don't have my big powerful desktop with me or powerful laptop, but I have a tinier one and somebody just discovered an error in our measure. Oh, I can just change the measure, right? And just make a new version or make sure that the refresh works or whatever. Great. There's always, I think, going to be a need, especially when you start working with larger data sets and more computing power that needs to happen to step out into desktop. And that's really where desktop will for me, will work, right? For offline scenarios where you go like, I take the data with me, I need to do all that heavy lifting and then push it back to the surface is what I would think we should do. And then there's another thing you could potentially think about as desktop being a live connection to the service, right? So why does the data have to be on your machine? It could just live there. As long as you have a good internet connection, you can still use a desktop client like Word, for example, Word stores its files on OneDrive these days, not on your local machine. So in essence, it's kind of similar. The file is over here somewhere. Your machine is just connecting to it and showing you an entry point to it.
Yeah.
Why couldn't desktop be like that in the future?
Who knows? Who knows? I think it's
I'm curious now to your answer, Liam.
No, so my answer was pretty much exactly the same, to be honest. So, and one of the reasons I cited was features. So for me, obviously, it's great. Yes, we can start to build our data sets, etc. in Fabric, which is ideal. Like you said, it really does empower users. It's pretty much the office. I always say it's office for data, pretty much. For anybody that has access, we can go there, we can play around. But if you're doing anything, I wouldn't even call it enterprise grade. I would say probably intermediate and up. Then, like you mentioned, features like RLS, obviously using your third-party tools, external tools, all of these requirements need desktop currently.
Yeah.
And the second part of that question I was going to ask you, Jay, is what does this mean for the future of desktop? So we know that we've, for pro devs that have come from tabular, even MDX-driven cubes or models, whatever you want to call them, Visual Studio and those integrations have been a lifesaver, something we've been waiting for years. But what does this actually mean for desktop moving forward? Do we see Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio potentially being a replacement, or desktop even becoming, like you mentioned, this fully fledged IDE for all of Fabric and Power BI encapsulated?
Yes.
I like that answer.
No. So the goal for us, and this is an interesting puzzle for us as product managers, is to build a tool. To evolve a tool that we have today called Power BI Desktop into a tool in which everybody that works with Fabric artifacts can work, right? So if you're a data analyst, you're more on the visualization side, you should feel right at home. If you're more on the technical side, you want to work with calculation groups and perspectives and hybrid tables and stuff like that, you should also be able to do your work. If you are in a professional environment, you need Git integration, you should also be able to do that. You should not be required to use another tool suddenly because you have a different hat on, your hat is differently colored suddenly. So Power BI Desktop will be that one tool for all of it. So the answer is yes to the question, will Power BI Desktop evolve into one tool to rule them all for everything under the sun with Power BI? The answer is absolutely yes. And in addition, the full experience on the web. Those two together, I think, is a winning combination.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Thanks for that answer, Jay, because there are people who have literally reached out to me and asked, do you think Power BI Desktop will retire? And I'm like, I don't think so. But I think you gave a better answer.
Let me be very blunt. Power BI Desktop is not going away. We're not retiring this. We're not deprecating this. Nowhere in our plans, nowhere in our talks, nowhere in our vision for the next whatever years is there any thought that would happen. Any. So if there's anybody out there that still thinks differently, come talk to me. I'll tell you again, it won't happen. Because there is so much value in desktop for scenarios where you don't have this live connection, where you want to take the data with you locally, you just need all the performance that a browser can simply not give you. You need something, and that is what desktop is going to be. So it is already, and it will be better. So our goal is to expand desktop into other scenarios as well. We talked about the Git integration. We talked about, maybe we should eventually allow you to do calc group editing. All of that good stuff is slowly coming towards desktop to make it the tool for all of the scenarios and all the personas that work with Power BI.
Okay. I suppose last point then, as we've categorically ruled out desktop going anywhere, can we also do the same for a name change?
Can we also do the same for a name change? I don't know.
Will it always be called Power BI Desktop?
Oh, I don't know. Microsoft is great at renaming stuff all the time, right? We kind of make a hobby out of that. So it might not be called Power BI Desktop. I don't know. I'm not privy to any of those conversations, but I would not be surprised if at some point in the future, some marketing team says, at this point, it kind of makes more sense to call it Power BI Studio. I don't know. I'm just coming up with something here, right?
Excellent.
Or Fabric Studio. I don't know. This is
Yeah.
not an announcement. It's just me rambling and responding on the spot. We're not taking away the tool, but are you saying, can you write in blood, it will never be any other name than Power BI Desktop? No, I can't, because Microsoft is well known for just renaming products. Look at Fabric, look at Synapse, right? That is now part of Fabric, originally called Azure SQL Data Warehouse, right? So we rename stuff all the time. It hasn't been Azure Active Directory just recently renamed to something, Entra, I think?
Yeah.
That's what Microsoft does. So I cannot give you any guarantee that this thing will always be called the same thing. I don't know.
Excellent.
Again,
Excellent. Thanks, Jay.
There were evidence that it will happen, but I'm not saying it will never happen.
Perfect. And then let's move on to some questions from the audience as well. So let's jump into this one from Jake. Jake's question is, what are your thoughts on the anti-calculate movement? eDNA seems to be advocating it for newer developers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm following it with interest. It's exciting that people actually go that far into DAX development to try and rethink how we approached creating that language, right? So calculate exists because we think it's the right answer, but it's always exciting for us to see that users are actually so much in love with this language that they go like, well, maybe there's another way, right? Maybe there's another way for me to take the pieces that actually went into calculate and do it differently. And that's also why we gave you all the pieces, right? Think of this as Lego. Like, we're not giving you the finished model. We're giving you all the building blocks. So I'm not against this at all. Doesn't mean that I think it's always the right answer. I don't think Enterprise DNA claims that either. I think it's a good option as an alternative. But I'm also not saying that we'll like adopt that or whatever. I think it's great that we have both options on the table, and for all we know, soon somebody might come up with a third way of doing all of this, which is great. I mean, that's just a testament to how passionate people are about Power BI and DAX in particular, right? That people go and invest this time to rethink these core concepts like calculate in this language. Now, for us, for me as a product manager on this team and one of the deciders on what the future of DAX is, my future is still making DAX easier on top of calculate, right? Because we have calculate for a reason. That is a core functionality. That's like a core part of the skeleton of DAX, if you will. That has been so core for us and so optimized that ripping that out now and saying, no, we're going to change all of that, and we would have to build all the optimizations that are on top of calculate, that if you look at all of this, the anti-calculate movement, actually, when you start looking at it on a scalability perspective, they need to take care of a load of optimizations there that we do when you do calculate. So for us, calculate is still the right option, and we're going to build on top of that. There's no thought that we're going to abandon that or whatever. Going back to a couple of things that I said a little bit earlier, we will try to hide it from you a little bit longer, so you don't have to go to all this infinite complexity of calculate. You don't have to worry about all of that weirdness that is in those books and those trainings, right? So that is really where we're thinking. But again, I'm not against this. I'm not, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want with this language. That's why we gave you all the pieces. It's very exciting to see this happen. It's, it's also very cool that they figured this out, and I like it. But I'm not saying we should choose one over the other.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you very much for that answer. Pragati, I'll pass over to you for the next question, please.
Yeah, I think, I'll ask this question. So this is coming from Oliver. Can we get the SQL script window in data flows to be made larger?
Sure.
Okay. That's a pretty good answer. Sure. Okay.
Nice and easy.
Nice.
I mean,
easy, yeah.
I would say interesting question. My official talk track would be, please vote on this, on ideas of Fabric, blah, 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 to make this happen. Also, half jokingly, I would say, what is stopping you from just going into developer mode into the browser and just changing the CSS here? Because I think that is what's happening here. You can just make it larger on your own. I know that's not an end user solution. I know. I'm just kidding. But, yes, this is something that we've heard before, so please vote on this. I will say with everything that's happening with Fabric and the enlarged focus on shipping that, let's not forget that Fabric is still in preview. I don't think this is our top priority right now. There's functional things like new functionality we need to build. And these are, for me, more like nice to haves or like quality of life things. Oliver might not agree with me because, he asked this question, so probably it's very, very pressing for him. But if you look at the scale of building a product, there's other stuff that we just simply have to build functionality first. So yeah, this has been feedback we've heard before. Please vote on it on the Fabric website. Add your +1 or rally your friends to add +1s on it. Absolutely do that, and that's how you increase the chances of this being built and improved in the future.
Yeah, and guys, I've posted that fabricideas.microsoft.com link in the chat. So if you can go and vote for this feature there, as Jay's saying, they have already got a feedback about it. So I'm assuming there should be already an idea logged against it. So just go and vote for it if you really.
There probably is already one or more about it.
Oh, could be. Yeah.
Yeah, and
maybe go and put a thumbs up on all of them.
Yeah, and it's not like we're against this or whatever. It's just saying, hey, we put this out there, and right now we're focusing on actually building more building blocks for you. And then once all of those building blocks are done, we'll slowly get back to, okay, how can we make all of these better, right? And that's where this for me sits. It's like it's a quality of life thing. Oh yeah, it would be great if we can just scale that, or I can, I don't know, open it up in a different window altogether so I can have it on multiple screens. So I actually, have it side by side. All of that good stuff is great, but the core functionality won't change, right? It's just the ease of use that is then improved. And when we are building a product, we mostly want to build the core functionality first. So I hope that kind of explains, Oliver. Sorry to disappoint.
Thanks, Jay.
Absolutely. And Oliver does mention that it is a small priority for him at the moment. So yeah, the best way is to go down the community ideas perspective.
That would be the way to influence these kind of decisions, yes.
Absolutely. And Jay, I don't think, well, I'm quite surprised we've got this far without any mentions of AI, Copilot, anything from that perspective. So I'm going to be devil's advocate here and throw this one in from a LinkedIn user. Would Microsoft have any intentions to use AI features in Fabric, especially in ETL and dashboarding? If so, how will it affect the current users?
Well, it's a great question. So our intention is to use AI functionality where it makes sense, where it actually adds value to our current workflow, where it amplifies your current work, not replacing it. Amplifying it is the key word here. So there's multiple ways that you can do this, right? As a product, you can go blindly and just slap on AI everywhere. Or even, I've seen some people do that in other software, luckily not at Microsoft, replace functionality that's currently there and working perfectly with just some AI stuff on top of that. That is not our strategy. We're saying we're applying this where it makes sense. We're thinking about, okay, in, for example, Power BI, does it make sense to do that for Power Query, right? Just to take one, right? Would it be a good way for me to describe in text the complete data flow that I want to build and have the AI generate that? Maybe for some simple things that might be useful, but I would say that many times it actually takes longer for you to gather your thoughts and type this out in text that the AI understands this than you actually doing this in the UI once you know your way around. So for me, really, this whole AI investment is going to be around how do we make it easier to get started, and how do we really think about where we can add real value onto here on top of what you already do, right? So, if we go back to the DAX world for a sec, yes, of course, it makes sense for us to allow you to describe what kind of DAX you want, right? What do you want this measure to do? And then generate that DAX for you. But it should always be very clear that what the AI generates is not a defined science, right? It's a game of chance. right? Chances are it gets it right, but there's zero guarantee it gets it right all the time. So it's up to you. The onus is on you as a user to validate that the thing it just created, the code, the DAX, the visuals, the ETL, whatever, is actually what you wanted. That onus will always be on you. So that's also what I mean with amplifying. It's not just replacing and blindly going, oh, just type something and I'm trusting it will do the right thing. No. This is AI. By definition, that's a game of chance. So you will always have to validate the output of this. So our goal is to apply it wherever it makes sense, to make either your life easier, onboarding, getting started easier, but also not replacing what you're currently doing, right? So yes, you should be able to describe what you want the DAX measure to do. Yes, but we wouldn't just rip it out and say there's no DAX, right? Because then there would be no way for you to validate that that answer that the machine gave you is actually the answer that you were looking for. And heaven forbid you're making choices about life and death, which some of our users and customers actually do when you get to the healthcare arena. People use DAX to make life and death choices. I'm not ready to have you write something to an AI and then cross my fingers and go like, I hope this is the right answer, but we cannot really test it anymore, right? I'm not ready to do that. I don't think any of our users in the healthcare space is ready to do that either. And I'm taking an extreme example on purpose. So really, we are thinking about how do we make it easier, but the onus is still on you as a user to qualify and validate that what the machine did is actually the answer that you were after. So yeah.
And I suppose it kind of leads on to a great question, I think, Jay, as well. So the way you summarize that is absolutely perfect. But what the problem that we have is that whilst Microsoft is pushing towards a lot more AI-driven technologies, there is that gap in knowledge in terms of what the AI is giving me isn't correct. For technical folk, I fully agree. Yes, that we understand how these LLMs and generative AI, etc., is put together and probability. For general adopters, so again, people that are just entering into the DAX world, testing Power BI, etc., what is going to be in place to educate them in terms of how to use these new features coming out?
So that's where it becomes very important to have the machine explain what it did with the input you gave it, right? So the way I'm thinking it, again, I'm going to use a DAX example because that's my world, but you can apply this to dashboarding and ETL as well. If you ask me to create a running sum of sales over time in the UK, the machine should not just give you a result, right? Here's the visual of a running sum. No, that's not enough. It should also give you the DAX it generates. That's still not enough. It also needs to go one step further and say, hey, this is the question you just typed, right? It's right there. You just typed it, so we don't repeat it to you. But it would say something like, based on your question, this is how I interpreted your question. This is what I got from that, right? So you asked me for a running sum of sales over time in the UK. UK meaning United Kingdom. Time meaning years and quarters and month. Great. This is actually an ambiguous question because in the UK, does that mean that the product was sold in stores in the UK, was shipped to the UK, or bought by customers that happen to live in the UK that might have been shipped to Nigeria for all we know? There's the machine should tell you this is the exact definition. I'm taking sales, the running sum of sales of products bought in the UK over time. And therefore, with that interpretation, this is the result that I'm showing you. And I'm confident that if we do those steps, we say, this is the original question, this is how I interpreted this. So therefore, from this interpretation, this is the result we're showing you, we'll be able to guide people to understanding and feel comfortable and trusting this machine, right? And the same should go for ETL. The same should go for reporting, right? If you say, generate a report that gives me insight into sales, well, great. It should say, okay, you asked for insight into sales. Well, I'm giving you visuals that show you the average sales over time. I'm showing you the number of returns over time, because that's also interesting when you look at sales, right? There's other stuff that I'm taking from that question. That's how I'm interpreting. Therefore, I'm giving you this report. But we need to have that intermediate step of this is how the machine, interpreted your question. Because without that step there, just jumping to the results, can never be any validation, never any trust.
Yep.
It's completely opaque.
Yep,
And
absolutely agree.
I think obviously in a way, like when it comes to AI, you can take it like as a starting point for anything. Like take an example of say suggested measures in Power BI desktop, which is already there, right? You can still go and ask for a ready-made DAX measure, select the category or say average sales by product or something. But sometimes that DAX might just not fit in your, kind of solution you want to define in Power BI, right? But it could be a very good starting point for you to start with the DAX calculation. Okay, suppose if I'm going to do a category per se, sales per category, then this is the way I need to approach. So it could be really a good point to start if you are starting with DAX.
But it's not,
as
it's
Jay
not
said, like but it's not like the end one or the most optimized DAX that AI has given you. You may have to work on it to make it the most optimized one. But like for me, as a personal experience, I really find that suggested measures as a good point to start something where I really don't know things. So that's how I would use AI in future as well. I won't use it like, oh, this is 100% the perfect solution. I would still doubt it. I would still try to validate it.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
That's what's called a suggestion. Now, the one thing I think we need to do better is that intermediate step, right? Today, you just push in something in that suggested measure and it gives you a result. It doesn't explain you how exactly it interpreted the question that might still be ambiguous. And I think we need to do better there to build that trust now that we're considering open up all these other scenarios, for example, to do an ETL generation or a dashboarding generation or a report generation. You can imagine that problem becoming very complex all of a sudden, right? So I think the goal here is to have the machine explain itself so you can validate and see what it is, build the trust that way. But yes, in every single instance, there will be tweaks you will have to do. There is a chance that the answer is not entirely what you expected, and that's okay, right? You can either just go back and change your question or change how you interacted with the AI to see, okay, if I type it like this, will it then generate the answer I'm looking for? And then, or you can just take it and edit the DAX if you know. And this actually ties back beautifully to our first conversation about DAX being hard. I think if we do a good job of making DAX easier and having that machine spit out that easier DAX, then suddenly people feel more comfortable editing the DAX because they can read the DAX and go like, oh yeah, I understand what this does, right? So instead of, like if you use suggested measure today, you might get a 25-line DAX statement for a very relatively simple question that you asked it to do. Maybe that should just be a very simple statement somehow that you can easily walk up to and go like, oh yeah, I understand this. I can read it. I can kind of understand what this does. So combining those two things together, I think we have all the ingredients to build the right experience for integrating AI. Again, not replacing, enhancing.
And PowerPoint has a very interesting feature as well, which is the trainer feature. Something like that in Power BI might be something from a DAX perspective that could work as well. Just as we jump into, I think we're going to have to go into a quick fire round based on time, if that's okay, Jay. So because we do have maybe 4 or 5 questions to get through. So Pragati, I'm just going to fire this first one, if that's okay. So this one comes in from Jake Duddy. What's your least and most favorite DAX function / concept?
Oh man. The least one I think I already mentioned a couple times, not because I don't like the power of it, but just what it does to our users is context transition. I think is the one thing. If I would be able to go back before I was even on the team, I would want to rethink that whole idea. So that's my least favorite. It's great, but it's very complicated. So it's maybe more trouble than it's worth. And the most favorite one, that has to be the things that I shipped almost a year ago now in December, the window functions, order by, index, offset, window, order by, those kind of things. Once you grasp that, it is awesome. Like suddenly all those weird things that you have to do when you wanted to do a running sum with a top N1 and then wrap that into an Excel calculator, do a summarize columns, and that all just goes away. You just type window and you're done. Yeah. So that's my favorite one.
If this was Teams, I'm sure we'd have lots of clap emojis coming up the screen if this was on Teams. But yeah, totally agree. Pragati, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking, what should I ask today? Because there are so many questions in there. Okay. I'll ask one question, but I really want to ask you one question. I won't allow you to leave the stream without answering that question.
Uh-oh.
But I'll go with this. Yeah. But I'll go with this one for now. So this question is coming from Ariel Explorer. He's asking, I saw that you can connect SQL Management Studio to Fabric dataset. Is there an intention behind Fabric to take over or all of the functionality of SQL Server or Azure SQL?
Wow. I don't know, but I would be surprised if we treat those worlds as equal. I think integration is the key here. There's definitely situations in which like SQL Server and Azure SQL can be better integrated into Fabric. So I think having Fabric treat those as a first-class citizen next to Synapse and OneLake makes total sense. But taking over is a very strong word. I don't think that's the right approach. I think these two things on its own have a lot of value. They need to live side by side because Fabric doesn't always need Azure SQL. Azure SQL doesn't for sure always need Fabric, right? So side by side, yes. Talking to each other, absolutely. But saying we're just going to sacrifice one for the other, I don't think that's the right answer. And I don't see any suggestion that would ever happen because it's not the same thing. What you do in Fabric is analytics. It's not a real-time, not a relational database for an application, right? Like a CRM system, whatever. That's not what you use Fabric for. You use it for analytics on top of that real-time analytics, a real-time database, that relational database, right? Yes, Fabric has a relational database, but it's an analytical-driven relational database, not for operational databases under applications. So I really see these as two separate worlds where they both will exist side by side. Integrating those two and making it easy to connect from one to the other, absolutely.
And anyways, these are the foundational things that people have been using for years, right? Like SQL Management Studio, yes. SQL Server, and Azure SQL. And if we think about that, this will get replaced by Fabric. This will never happen because there might be. I don't know millions of systems that will break, right?
Never say never, but I would be very, 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 very surprised. The way you should see this development is, again, the integration. Make it easy, right? The people that are working with Azure SQL already use SQL Management Studio and Azure Data Studio. So it makes total sense to also then allow you to connect to Fabric assets to say, hey, once you have the data, you want to integrate this and bring it into Fabric, you can do that easily. You don't have to jump to a separate tool. So that's where I see this development. And that's what I talk about with integration. It is not a sign for me that Azure SQL or SQL Server is ever going to go away because those use cases are almost completely disjoint.
Excellent. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This question comes in from Ahmed, and he asks, what could be the role of advanced data analysis, ADA, component of ChatGPT-4 with Power BI in the nearest future?
So the nearest future is the one that's searching up here. Because that's always hard. No, I mean, we're definitely looking at this component and seeing what it does. It's I think important to recognize that the components that we have available for us to work with when we do AI integrations based on the OpenAI tool set that is built by that company, that organization, is not 100% aligned with all the components that are in ChatGPT. Think about ChatGPT as another product that is built on that same foundation. We don't use ChatGPT. We use the core components on which ChatGPT is built. So saying just use that component from ChatGPT and put it into Power BI is not going to work because it's not on the same. Those are siblings. It's not that we build Power BI on top of ChatGPT. No. ChatGPT is based on components that are OpenAI components. Power BI uses those same components. So we're looking at it as like, oh, that's an interesting development. But just saying that component will make it into Power BI, I don't think that's true. That is not something that we're currently considering. We are looking at the things that ChatGPT builds because they have a very interesting angle on how to develop things, and then saying, okay, using the components that we have, on which they started as well, what are the things that we can do in part of our product? But don't think of ChatGPT as that product is going to make it into Power BI, because those are two separate things. The underlying foundation is shared, but it's two separate things.
I think this is where we get back down to the understanding of what's happened over the course of the last year with the arrival of ChatGPT, and like I say, this gap in terms of knowledge, in terms of what AI actually is and how it comes about, but not something to be touched on today. Thanks, Jay. Pragati, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I think this could be the final question, but I really wanted to ask you, Jay.
I have a little bit more time, so I can go a little bit longer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but I want to ask this question, so I'll ask it right now. I know you might be under some NDA or something, but I would still ask you, can you hint on something for all our audience, like what might be something new coming to Power BI, I mean, which we should be excited about?
Well, I mean, there's so many things that you should be excited about, and if you go rewatch this, I already gave you loads of hints between the lines. Just listen to what I say and then try to interpret from there. I always like to kind of like do that a little bit. No, I think we talked about loads of stuff, right? AI obviously is a key investment area, as we talked at length about. Our visual overhaul is also something to be excited about. Like, I once made a statement, and it was a very blunt statement, but it was a year ago, I think, that I said, if you look at Power BI Desktop, all of those pixels on that screen are going to change. That's not entirely fair. It's kind of a blanket statement, but there's some grain of truth in there. Like, when you zoom into visuals, all of that is going to change. And we already seen the first kind of examples, right? With the new card being announced and the roadmap for all the other visuals coming. So that's very, very exciting. If you look at what's happening there, and that's a multi-semester, multi-year approach, but that's a very exciting development. And then of course DAX, that is going to be exciting for sure. I mean, it's not for nothing that I spent 2.5 years, and not just me, by the way, a whole team. And I say I mean me and my team, 2.5 years on something, right? We're not just gonna sit there for 2.5 years and give you one new DAX function, right? This is going to change everything you know about DAX, and all of that will be revealed
next week.
Less than a week from now, actually.
Next week, right?
So that's very exciting for sure. So there's definitely loads of stuff, interesting stuff. Oh, and then I haven't talked about the professional angle, right? Like Git integration. Like, what do we do there? How do we give you the ability to work with more the professional parts of the Power BI, like what we talked about? How do we grow Power BI into this professional tool? All of that is being built at the moment and being worked on, and so much is coming. The future is really, really, really exciting for Power BI.
So yeah, I guess as a Power BI developer, I should be very much looking forward to something big coming up, right? From next week, starting from next week, I guess.
Well, yes, starting from next week, you will see loads of fireworks, and expect that fireworks to continue all the way until the end of the year, all the way until the holidays. We have the Power Platform Conference next week. We have Ignite coming up. We have PATH Summit coming up. We have the Microsoft Data and AI Conference. So you can expect that at those big moments, we'll definitely have more to share, right? So Ignite is, for example, more on the professional kind of angle. So that's more for the Power BI developers. There's loads of stuff coming in there. So if you felt like, and I've heard that feedback, if you felt like the updates have been a little bit light, a little bit thin these last couple months, that is not because we're not doing anything. It's just because we're holding back. But like, we're going to keep something to have this wow moment. And that wow moment, the first one is going to come next week. And I look at the list of the things that we're going to show you, the things that we're going to announce. That list is long. It's really long. We talked about it like yesterday. Like, is this really are we going out with all of this? Yes, we are. And we're not even halfway done with everything else that's coming. Yes. It's crazy.
Yeah. So guys, if anyone is there in Las Vegas or nearby areas, then please do come to Power Platform Conference.
And otherwise, just follow Pragati on Teams or on Twitter and LinkedIn. She will make pictures and share it with all of you.
Yeah, Jay announcing everything. Because if you haven't attended any keynotes like that before, where Microsoft actually announces big things, then it's like a moment when you hear about the products you're working from years, and then something really comes up that you have been looking forward from like say last 3 years, and then it's like so big. So if you are there, please do come and attend the conference, because it's really nice to see these guys announcing these things.
Yeah, it's an exciting moment for us as well, right? I mean, we've been pouring our heart and souls into this for like years, and just being able to now finally open up about it, and not just with amongst ourselves.
It's not a secret anymore, right? You can't talk about it.
It's exciting. So it's scary and exciting at the same time. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of stuff coming. Don't feel like Fabric has taken away the energy out of Power BI, or maybe you felt like that because the updates being very thin. I'm here to reassure you there's still loads of very passionate people working on Power BI, me being one of them, but of course, like Amanda and Mo and Lukash and all others, we are all very much still heads down working on Power BI. We might have been silent for a little bit, but that is a very practical reason, because we wanted to sandbag a little bit for these moments that are coming up, and we're ending the year with firework. I can guarantee you that. Funny story. I had a conversation like this on Reddit the other day, on the r/Power BI subreddit, and somebody said like this. It's like, what? Why is there no? Why are people why is there nothing happening on Power BI anymore? And I have the agreement with that person. I don't know who it is because they use an alias. They might be listening right now, to say, let's check back in December. And I'm gonna make you eat your own words. Like, we will blow your mind. This will be, you will not be able to look me in the eyes and say, you guys did nothing this year. That is not, if anybody can do that after that year, I'll eat my shoes. No way.
I'm sure, Jay, because you guys put really a lot of effort.
Of course.
I can definitely see that, because how Power BI is, because I literally started working with Power BI when it was first announced in July 2015. So I've seen Power BI grow. So I can definitely vouch how much you guys put your effort in, and I'm really, really now looking forward to next week.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd
agree with that as
well. And talk about things. And yeah, definitely, Leon, you'll get all the updates. Don't worry about that.
Oh, definitely. I think that's probably a good. I think that we've got the excitement levels up to where they need to be ahead of next week. So I think, Jay, we do have a couple more questions, but I think this is a good logical stopping point. I want people to be edge of their seats, like I am as well, and like Pragati is, and like Jay is as well, to release this. You say, it's been something that you and the team have been working on for a long period of time now, and it's exciting.
You don't do any screen sharing, because right here is all the secrets on this side. But no screen sharing. It's good that I'm in control and there's no AI that suddenly can put my screen onto your screen.
Well,
so just wait a little bit. Less than 7 days from now, tune in. Make sure you're on social media, because if you love Power BI, your world is going to change. It's going to blow your mind.
Absolutely excited, fantastically exciting time. And Jay, I appreciate you staying with us a little bit over as well. Myself and Pragati will just go ahead and close this session, but I do want to say thank you very much for going through, giving us those little nuggets as well that I'm sure everybody is already rewinding back and playing back as well. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay, well,
thank you so much, mate. Thank you so much, Jay, for agreeing to take out time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, before we close, I just want to say thank you as well to you two for organizing this and having me. And when you tuned in, and if you ever watch this recording, I just want to say that we at Microsoft really appreciate you being part of our community and spending your free time. All of you, organizers, speakers, presenters, visitors, users, doesn't matter. You are the ones that make this product better. You're the ones why we do our work. So it's not just us, it's you guys helping us build the best thing that we can build. So I want to thank you for that as well.
No, that's a great message, Jay. And I suppose just the other side of that I'm sure a lot of users and myself and Pragati will concur, is thank you to you, the team, and Microsoft for actually listening. It makes a big difference that people can raise ideas, concerns, thoughts, and that we're actually heard. So just wanted to go on record and say that.
And I made a mistake. I said guys, and I don't want to be exclusive. You all. That's what I meant, right? It's a habit that I'm trying to not do anymore. But I just heard myself say it again. It's not you guys, it's you all, everybody included. It's not just guys in here. all of you should be welcome and feel included and feel heard in our product. And if that's not what you're feeling, please reach out to me, because I want to change that as well. So I just wanted to add that.
And definitely, guys, I mean, that fabric ideas at Microsoft.com, just go and submit your ideas, because I have seen those ideas getting implemented in last 7 years. So
yeah, absolutely.
They listen to us and they bring those features. Yeah, and that will happen.
Yes,
so
it will take longer than you wanted to, but yes.
Yeah.
Maybe you should take a printout of the top 25 Power BI ideas and to the keynote and just
Should I bring that? Should I bring that to Power Platform conference? Like multiple copies, so I can distribute with among all the Microsoft products.
Bring a pen so you can start scratching off items that we finally built. Yeah, maybe. Why not?
Yeah. Actually, it's a good way of tweeting about things what have been done.
Well, exactly. I for one, I'm going to go and have a look at the top 25 items on there, just in case there's any Easter eggs. But yes, looking forward to next week.
I'm getting the printout, Jay, now.
Maybe I said a little bit too much right here, but that's okay. Let's close this now before I say more.
Jay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So much,
Thanks all.
And thank you everybody for joining us at the Microsoft Fabric UK user group. I've been your host, Leon Gordon and Pragati. Thank you very much for joining us as well.
Thanks, everyone. Today's session was quite exciting. And I know many people might be thinking about things that are going to come from next week. But yeah, stay tuned. You'll get the news soon.
Excellent. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.